FC Halifax Town are on their best run of home league wins almost in 12 years after beating Chesterfield and Dorking over the weekend and on Tuesday night. And on the show now to discuss this and much more is the Halifax Courier's Tom Scargill. Hi, Tom.
Hi, mate.
I should correct myself there. It will almost be their best run for 12 years, won't it, if they win another home game? Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, it's back to the Vardy days, isn't it? When they had such a great run of home form, which is fantastic when you consider some of the teams and some of the players have had in that time. And considering the start they've made this season, it's quite an accolade for them to be within touching distance of this kind of this record.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Well, we'll start with that win over Chesterfield. We did mention last week that Halifax do have a result in them and they have proved that this season already, but still remarkable, isn't it?
It's fantastic, especially coming off the back of a disappointing performance and result at Yeovil. But full credit to them. They put that behind them. Chesterfield, very good team up there in third place for a reason. But I think it shows how far the team has come this season, that they made Chesterfield look very ordinary, I would say, completely nullified them as an attacking threat and grew into the game, grew in confidence. And in the end, I don't think you could really argue with the result.
No, absolutely not. Who were the players that you picked out then for special praise? I know in your match report you mentioned Capello, who was just fantastic, wasn't he?
Another very impressive performance from him. Is at left wing back. He's played that role before in his career. But since he's been playing there, he's looked at home, brings a lot of energy. Similar to Golden on the other flank, they both bring a lot of athleticism, dynamism to that role. I think that's something that the team was lacking in the early weeks, where maybe lacking some movement, some energy, some sparkle about them, but they've brought that. I think at the start of the game there was a danger that they were maybe playing 5 at the back rather than 3, and that's something that Milton's talked about. He wants to avoid when they play 3 at the back, but as the game went on, they grew in confidence, and Capello really drove the team on. He's got good athleticism, good energy down that left, as has Golden down the right. And obviously when you play 3 at the back, the wing backs are crucial in that system, and they're absolutely flying at the moment, those two.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to Tuesday against Dorking Wanderers, they followed up that great result with another great win. No doubt Dorking will be extra unhappy that it's Halifax that have done them over in that game, but another cracking win.
Yeah, I noticed the club said full time on Twitter something like, "You can call us what you like, but we'll take the 3 points" or something. So there was a bit of extra spice to that. But great to back it up and get back-to-back wins out of those 2 games. I think I'll just be pleased that the game got played, really, as much as anything else. But I wasn't there on Tuesday, but I saw the goals back and some excellent goals. I think one kind of fear that Milton had was, they put a lot into Chesterfield. There was an illness through the squad as well, which made the Chesterfield result even better. And there was perhaps a concern of how much is that going to have taken out of them. But so to kind of recharge the batteries for a cold Tuesday night, go again as the phrase goes in football these days, and get themselves up for it and put in another big performance was very commendable. Senior and Summerfield dropped out because of the illness, but I think there's been a few players over the 2 games who've played when they're not 100%. But that's the kind of spirit that's through the camp at the moment. There's a can-do spirit, a real togetherness in the group, and that's showing with performances and results.
Yeah, absolutely. And up next, it's Barnet, who should be a good test for Halifax. I mean, they've won the last 4. They're sitting in 5th, so yeah, it should be a good indication of just where Halifax are at the moment.
If it gets played, which there's doubts, I think it'd be a good test for both teams, a good test of Barnet's credentials. Probably not a lot of people expected them to be where they are so far this season, but fair play to them. They've had a fantastic season so far. Halifax have clawed their way up to within touching distance of the top 7 now. made up a bit of lost ground in those early weeks. I think Halifax will want it to be on. They're in a very good place at the moment. If it doesn't get played, it's not necessarily too bad because they've got Southend away on Tuesday, which is going to be a massive test, very difficult place to go. So if they have a free Saturday, it might allow the illness in the camp to clear up a little bit. So I think either way, it might be a kind of a win-win. But I don't think Barnet will be relishing the prospect at all, to be honest, going to the Shea with that record we talked about in kind of touching distance. So I think Town will just be saying, let's roll on to the next game, bring it on. We're in a good place. The mood is good. Confidence is high. You can see that in the way that they're playing and the goals they scored on Tuesday. So I think I'll probably say Barnet have more to fear than Halifax on Saturday.
I mean, looking at league table now, sat in 10th place, Halifax Town, which is just incredible, really, compared to where they were, just a short while ago. What do you sense the mood is with Millington at the moment? Do you think they can push on further from here?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I'm in the early stages of writing my kind of review of the year, and it's just typical Halifax Town, where it's just so unpredictable. Finished in the playoffs back in the last season, sunk to bottom of the table at the start of this season, and now they're within touching distance of the playoffs. It's just never a dull moment. I think Millington's been through so much already as a manager with Jamie Allen and the huge turnover of players and literally hitting rock bottom of the table and just completely turning it around. It's just been an incredible story so far in his first senior management role. I think that's made him a better manager, really. I think he'll have learned a lot about his players, about himself as a manager. I think he has a much better idea of his team, what he wants from his team, who his kind of favoured players are, who can give him what he needs as a manager from his team. So I think they're in a so much stronger position than they were. January is obviously looming in terms of are there going to be other clubs circling for their players and going to be able to resist those offers that will no doubt come in. But for the moment, I think it looks like they're going to be ending the year on a massive high, which was just completely not in the picture a couple of months ago. It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, one of our other correspondents who covers Bradford Park Avenue for us, he put out a tweet and he was saying about Halifax Town and Bradford Park Avenue both sticking with their managers after poor starts to the season. And it's proved dividends, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mark Bauer's done a really good job at Park Avenue. A couple of times in recent years when Halifax have been without a manager, I've thought he'd make a good candidate because he's done a really good job there. And I know that they were struggling early this season, similarly as Halifax were. But that is the culture these days, and there were huge calls among the fan base for David Bosworth to act and to get rid of Millington. But from the limited kind of noises that came out of the club, I don't think it was ever really seriously considered. I think Bosworth said when Millington was appointed that it was he got the job with flying colours. He really impressed in the interview, etc. So he has acted swiftly in the past as Bosworth with Darren Kelly, for example, a few years ago. But I think he saw the work that Millington did over the 3 years with Pete Wild, and fair play to him. He stuck with his guns. He wasn't for kind of shifting in that sense, and he's been proved absolutely right. And the fans who were calling for Millington's head with wasn't perhaps unreasonable to be having that point of view after the start that had been made, but I think they've been proved to be wrong and Bosworth has been proved to be right. And how many chairmen in this day and age in football would have taken Bosworth's stance and resisted those calls? It's such a short-term industry these days. I think 80-90% of other clubs probably would have got rid of Millington, but fair play to Bournemouth. They stuck by him and he's been rewarded for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing quite a few Halifax Town fans now tweeting out "trust the process" in one of those modern day phrases that you hear so much of. It's another tricky game on Tuesday as well. So it's Southend, who are just sitting in 6th place. So, I mean, like you say, if the Barnet game goes ahead, it's going to be a couple of tricky games. What do we expect from Southend?
Yeah, I really like them. Their manager Kevin Marr is a legend as a player, and I think they've got a real connection between him and the supporters. They're going through some tough times off the pitch, Southend, but he deserves a lot of credit for the job he's done, because they were in a real mess when he took over last season. But he's made some good signings in the summer, and I mean, on paper, it's 2 very tough games, isn't it? 5th and 6th in the space of 4 days. Pretty grueling. Not an easy place to go to, Southend, especially under the lights. It'd be a good atmosphere, fairly kind of intimidating, and Halifax will need to show a lot of character if they're going to go there and get something. You kind of say it every week in terms of, well, this is a test for them. This is need to prove the credentials, and most weeks they've been doing that, passing those tests, showing the credentials, but they need to keep doing it because they lost a lot of ground in those first couple of months. And I think they're still kind of in the process of making up that ground. So if can just, there is a point where you kind of wonder, is it going to be one game too far? Maybe Southend if Barnet goes ahead, because there's been this illness in the camp. Players are coming back from injury rather than having a fully fit squad to choose from. It's not quite fully fit yet. But I mean, if we could get 4 points from the next 2 games, if they go ahead, I think that would be a fantastic return.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you very much for joining us. We'll look forward to speaking to you again next week.
You're welcome.
Thank you.